Welcome to the Tanyaacker Show. I'm doing this series on deciding, and frankly, I think that one of the most important decisions that anyone can make is not to let somebody else be the boss of you, not to let somebody else decide what you're capable of, what your worth is, what you should be doing, and really not to live within the confines of someone else's expectations, especially if they're not consistent with what you want and know and believe to be true about yourself. And so my next guest could not be a more perfect example of that. He is the oldest graduate in Emory's 2025 class. He got a master's in business for military vets. That was at 86. But before that, he was the oldest graduate in Emory's 2016 class, where he got a master's of religion and public life. And oh, by the way, that's on top of his other 2 degrees. He has a law degree and a master's in litigation, which makes me think that a bunch of folks would probably not want to oppose him in court. Hurl Taylor is here. I read about this gentleman, and what I read was inspirational. I found the conversation inspirational. I think you will too. And just remember, folks, you know what? A lot of people are out there telling you what you can do and what you can be and what you can have. And they have all sorts of ideas about what those things are, but don't let anybody else decide for you. You decide for you. That's the lesson that you will get from Hurl Taylor, but he will tell you better than I can. Here I am with Hurl, and please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for being here. Wow, welcome to the show, Hurl. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. I think you're just fascinating. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You are the oldest graduate in Emory's 2025 class. You received a master's in business for military vets. You were the oldest graduate in Emory's 2016 class when you received a master's of religion and public life. And you have described yourself as a lifelong learner. Those, by the way, are not your only degrees. We'll talk about the other ones. I think I have a show idea for you. But what does being a lifelong learner mean to you?
Being a lifelong learner simply means that there's always more out there to learn, and that the only way you can get it is to continue to go to school, to get training, to listen well, to read a lot. Uh, the world is evolving, so rapidly. New information is being added each and every day, so you have to keep up with it through the whole lifetime.
So the other 2 degrees that I referred to, you have a law degree, also from Emory, and a master's in litigation from Emory. So clearly you love Emory, but why law? Like that, those are, that's sort of a life path for a lot of people. What made you go down that road?
Well, I did 20 years in the Army. And while I was in the Army, I really started to take a small correspondence course with some university in law. And so I got some books, I read it, and I just kind of liked it. Also, while I was in the Army, part of my duties were to actually act as a defense counsel. I got some training with the JAG, the Judge Advocate General Corps, and also, there were times when I actually prosecuted a couple of cases. And I think on one occasion, I acted as what we call a summary court judge. So I had no legal training except for what the Army gave me. And of course, I always liked Perry Mason and all those things growing up. And I decided, well, maybe this might be for me. But when I got out of the Army, I taught high school for 1 year because I was trained as a biology teacher. I taught 1 year of high school biology, and then I knew that kind of wasn't my thing. Career change. Why not try law? You interested in it?
How old were you when you went to law school?
44.
44. When I was in law school, we had a number of folks who kind of went to law school after having pursued other careers. But I do think that there is something really special in your story. And I'm not joking when I said I have a show. Like, you want to be a TV judge? Like, I wish I know some people. I could make some introductions. Like you clearly have a lot of folks, or rather, you have a lot of experience. And I think that you bring to these different educational disciplines something really special. So, as someone in their 80s, you're back in school, you've got colleagues, student colleagues, fellow students rather, who are quite a bit younger. Did you hang out with them? Like, did you have a social life? Did you make friends while you were uh, in the course of your studies?
Yes, I made 29 friends. There were 30 of us there. And so I tried to get to know each and every one on an individual basis. Did I hang out? Well, just a tiny bit. We had a couple of kind of planned activities, and I hated to say no because I didn't want to be that true outsider. So, yeah, I hung with them as long as I could. I mean, I couldn't stay with them too late because I had to get home and get some sleep.
uh, they will find out too that they need sleep more than they realize it. Like we all get there. I
Yeah.
the current degree, the most recent degree, the master's in business for military vets. Talk a little bit about why that was important to you. You mentioned your service in the Army. Let me take this opportunity to thank you for that service. I tend to think that it is a great shame that we don't do better by the men and women who serve this country as they get on in years. I think that our neglect of that community is pretty shameful. Why did you want to pursue this particular degree on top of the law degree, on top of the master's in litigation, and on top of the master's of religion and public life? Why were these studies particularly important?
Well, let me go back uh, in the late 90s, 1995 to about 2000. I was a professor at the Atlanta John Marshall Law School. I ran a legal aid clinic there. And one of the populations that I looked particularly for was the veterans, and more specifically, the homeless veterans. There were a lot of homeless veterans there in Atlanta. And we partnered with the Veterans Administration Hospital, who had a program for homeless vets. And on one occasion, we spent a whole weekend there at a location where we would actually the VA would pick up the homeless vets by bus, bring them in, and for 3 days, they were able to get food, haircuts, showers, legal advice. I took about 12 of my students there, and so we kind of went around the clock working with the veterans. I decided after that time I wanted to continue that. So I had some ballpoint pens made up with the address and the phone number, and many times we had homeless veterans to come over to the law school. And if nothing else, we could sit and talk with them, give them some hope, help them with some of their problems. And when I saw that it's called the Gorzetta Business School of Emory University, was going to open up a brand new program. It was going to be called a Master of Business for Veterans, MBV. The only other school in the country was University of Southern California, and they had been doing it about 10 years. So I said this would be a great time to get a lot more business acumen. So when I'm dealing with some of these veterans, whether they're homeless or not, I can help them, start new businesses, help them with the regulatory problems that might exist. So I think there's three things that resonated with me. One, it was Emory. I knew Emory, I'd been there before. And of course, the second thing was a business degree. And then, of course, for veterans, you put those three words together. Yeah, that was what I needed, what I wanted.
There is something about your story really, I think, screams out the importance of being a self starter, as it were. So even as I hear you talk about why you wanted to pursue this latest degree. You saw a problem, so you decided to get the information and the education you needed to be a part of the solution. I read another article about you where you said you may not be done. Your next degree might be in nursing, so that you will know better how to make sure you're well cared for if at some point that becomes necessary. What's your advice to people who just sometimes don't really have the motivation? Uh, they don't see the options, they don't see the advantages of learning new things. What do you say to those people?
See, always try to seize the opportunity. You will find many times that just casually you hear about a program, you hear about some training, you hear about an opportunity to learn something. Try to engage, learn it. It may come in very handy at some point. It may be the opening for a new career for you, but it also may just be something that you can help others with. And throughout my life, I've always thought that I needed to share with other people. So if I know more, if I have more information, then I can share more information with people.
What was the hardest thing about uh, getting another degree, not just now in 2025, this year, but as I mentioned in 2016, you were the oldest graduate of your class then. What did you find most challenging?
Candidly, for me, the most challenging to me was keeping up with all the digital advances. When I was undergrad, we took notes. You had no phones, you had no computers, none of that. So when I looked at all my younger classmates, with all the iPads and things and doing miracles, I said, wow. So that was probably the hardest thing for me.
How'd you get through that?
I used my colleagues. I was never ashamed to go to one of my colleagues and say, "Look, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me?" And they were very happy to assist me. You see, because they knew also that I had some knowledge and I had some stories to tell. I'm a storyteller, and so we kind of traded off those kinds of things.
As you were getting this information from them and learning how to kind of manage these newer technologies, uh, a process that in which they were helping you, what do you think they got from you? What did you teach them?
Well, I think I taught them one thing that was probably the primary thing was that if you have an experience, try to tell it in such a way that other people can benefit from it, not just a funny story. And I like to have a little humor also in my storytelling. I can give you a pretty good and quick example. In 1986, when the Challenger spaceship went up and exploded, there was one of my good friends and fraternity brothers on there, Dr. Ron McNair, Omega Psi Phi.
Mm.
And I had met him just months before that. He came over to speak while I was a student at the law school. And I said to him, "You just never know what you're going to be getting into." I met this young man. I was impressed with him as a scientist. And just months later, he's gone. He taught me some things. I probably taught him some things. And the thing that I did share with him, which was very personable, I actually gave him an Emory Law School t shirt and suggested to him, "You might want to wear this while you're in space."
Mm.
Well, he did or not, I don't know. But they found
Mm.
that to be, kind of interesting anyway, that I had that contact, that personal contact with that person.
What was that like seeing your friend be a victim in that horrible tragedy?
It hurt me deeply, so much that I can recall specifically when I heard the news. I was actually kind of on a lunch break, and I didn't go back to law school class that day. I stayed at the television looking at it until it played out in the late evening hours. I reached out to his two brothers, who were also fraternity brothers, and expressed my condolences to them, and then later on to his wife. So uh, months later, I was instrumental with some other people to actually establish the Ron McNair Scholarship Foundation. And we partnered with
Mm.
such institutions as Georgia Tech to teach some classes. We also went to the space camp in Huntsville. And so I think we got a lot of young students involved in STEM programs and also specifically in space. And that was one way to honor the legacy of Dr. McNair.
And it's another example of how so much of your life seems to be centered on doing, being proactive, taking measures to change things, whether in your own life or in the broader community. And in your case, in your own life, so that you can impact the broader community. A few weeks ago, I had on a guest who talked a lot about being an elder. And, we're all elders to those who came before us. And as I listened to you tell the story about the Challenger and your personal experience with that, you've had a lot of experience. I mean, you have seen a lot of life in this world, a lot of life in this country. You grew up in Virginia. Uh, are you hopeful? Do you think we're on the right track?
It's something in progress, I would have to say. We are straying a lot from the right track. We get on the track and then we move a little bit and then we stray. We kind of get set back and then things happen and we get back on track. So it's kind of on a continuum, which I would say is relatively slow right now.
Throughout the course of these different educational experiences, these professional experiences, uh, but the like going back to school as many times as you did in particular, I'll focus on that. Was there something that was an unexpected surprise to you, either positive or negative? Or if you have an example of both, that would be great to hear too.
Well, I think the only thing that was probably negative that there were times when I didn't always feel that some of the professors uh, could adequately deal with me. There was many times that I was in class, and that was the first time that a professor had had an older student, an elder, and sometimes it almost appeared to me that there were some, just a few, that perhaps felt that I was over the hill more or less. Why is this older man here in class? This is for the younger people. But I usually I got through that because I think I demonstrated that I knew what I was doing and I was able to build on my experiences. I think the very positive things was just meeting all of the colleagues that I had and also my professors and the staff members, the administrators. And when I say staff and administrators, I go all the way down to, you might say, the very bottom. I always try to make friends with your maintenance people, your culinary staff, the people at the front desk, the folks that a lot of times don't get any, acknowledgement at all. And so I've just enjoyed that. I enjoyed doing that. So that was always positive to me. And every single class that I took, I always came out with at least one little bit of wisdom. And it didn't always come from the professor. It might have come from the
Mm.
lady from Nigeria that was sitting behind me.
Funny you say that there were a few folks who thought you were over the hill. I got to say, sir, uh, I know some folks who are 50 years younger than you, if not more, who don't have a tenth of your drive and your energy. It really is an inspiration. And on that note, sort of right along the lines of people's expectations or assumptions, what are some of the assumptions uh, that you want to disabuse people of with respect to our very engaged elders? What are some of the stereotypes that you really want to take an opportunity now to tell folks it's time to think differently?
I think the very first one is that there are some misconceptions that when people age sometimes that they automatically are going to start getting into like Alzheimer's or dementia. and that's not necessarily true. I think if we just look at cognitive functioning, that couldn't be a slowing. I mean, that's probably going to come with age, but that many of the elders, their minds are just as sharp as they can be. Sometimes the bodies are not there. The bodies might go and they may be walking with crutches or walking canes, but their minds are pretty sharp. And also within those gray minds, gray matter that they have, there's a lot of information that's stored up in it. And you just need to tap it a little bit. Uh, so that's one of the misconceptions that they have. I think another one is that uh, sometimes people feel that we have learned enough. You never can learn enough,
Mm.
you know? If someone would say, why are you still going back to school? What are you going to do with it? Well, as I always said, I'm going to help people, but it's always something to learn. Yeah. I haven't learned everything, and neither have you.
The first thing that you said is something else I really want to emphasize about the assumptions people make about the necessity of decline, the necessity of cognitive decline, the necessity, or rather, the inevitability, I should say, of decline. And I know in my own life, I try to move forward in a way where I don't assume those things will be the case. I pray to God and I'm knocking on this wood. I will ask for all the help from anybody who can give it. That when I am when I hit your stage in life, that I have your lucidity and vigor and energy. And so, on that note, tell us what to do. How do you stay like this? Because unfortunately, we do see a lot of people kind of grapple with decline of various sorts as they progress in years. What's your advice to the rest of us? What should we be doing? Tell me. I need to know the secret sauce.
Well, let's start with some health issues first of all, some physical things you can do. I like to walk. I don't jog anymore, but and I never was a runner, but I do like to walk. So even now, when I go places, I tend to park as far away as I can from the store. I'll
Mm.
go to the back of the parking lot. So then I'm walking to the store and walking back. Even around the house, I'll walk and walk and walk. So I try to keep physically fit. And I'm sure that many of you have heard this from your mothers and your grandmothers, your grandfathers, your coaches, your professors, and anyone else to tell you, well, don't use drugs. Well, at 86 years old, I mean, I'm proud to say I've never used drugs. And, being in the Army 20 years, I was exposed to a whole bunch of stuff.
Nothing, not nothing, no drugs at all, never, no weed, nothing,
Never, never,
no drugs at
never
all.
tried weed. I mean, if I go into a room with some weed, I can smell it, but I usually will
Yes, you can.
vacate
It's
the room. Yeah, I just never, yeah. I guess because my
Do you
mom told me
drink?
don't take
Do you have
stuff
any
in your body that
vices?
can hurt you.
Any
Uh,
vices? Do you drink?
I
Do you
can't
eat
discuss
bad
those
food?
right
Do you
now. I'm
have a
gonna have to
burger and
take a trip on
fries?
that.
Yes, you can.
Now I can eat some pork now. I can eat some pork. Yeah, everything on the hog from the rooter to the tutor. Yeah, yeah. I'm a pork eater.
I
Yeah.
know that's right. Are you married?
Not anymore. I'm divorced. I have 5 children.
You have a girlfriend?
Sometimes nothing steady. Just sometimes. Yeah.
So tell me, what is your idea of a great date?
Well, a great date would be, first of all, one in which, there's a lot of respect shown both ways. Ideally, it would be an activity which we would both enjoy. Let's say that we both like movies. Well, what kind of movie? You like horror movies? You like suspense? You like drama? And we'll reach shall we say, a negotiated movie and we'll go to it. Um, the expectations would be that each one of us would share to the extent that we are comfortable about it, our lives. And also, I think it would probably not be a true expectation that there would be a second date, but hopefully there would be a second date. Um, at the end of the date, both persons probably should say, I really enjoyed that. Let's do it again.
How do you meet folks? Do you meet online? Do you meet
Oh
people
no, it's
at
always going to be
activities?
in person. I've never met anyone online, um, and it could be any place. It could be in a library, for example, because I go to the library quite a bit. Uh, or another place that I I used to meet young ladies was at the swimming pool. I was a swimmer, and so I like to hang around pools. And every now and then someone might need a little help on a stroke or something like that, and that's a good way to meet people because you're up personal, close and personal. So I might meet you at a swimming pool somewhere. There's church also, but I'm a little bit leery, with the church. There's just so much gossip that goes on in the church.
Yeah, churches get churches can get very
Yeah,
gossipy. Uh, your fidelity to God doesn't mean that you don't sometimes have a loose tongue and like to talk about folks. I read also that you enjoy books, always have, and that you're a great reader. What are you reading right now?
I'm reading a book by a professor at Georgia State. His name is Maurice Hobson. It's the legacy of the Black um, Mecca in Atlanta. It's a fascinating book. He's done an awful lot of research. Looking
Hmm.
back at when Maynard Jackson was the first black mayor, and all of the things they did to get the 1996 Olympics there. And so that's what I'm reading right now. I just received a copy from Dr. Hobson, who's also one of my fraternity brothers. Yeah.
You that book sort of makes me kind of harken back to a different version of a question I asked you earlier. I think I asked you earlier whether or not you thought things were kind of proceeding on the right track. I think I'd like more specifically to ask you about your view and your vision of the condition of Black folks in America. I mean, you were born at a time when things were very, very different for us. And while there's no doubt that they've gotten better, and if you don't think, and for anybody who's watching or listening to this, if you don't think they've gotten better in very material ways, then you just need to read a little more history than I have time to
Yes.
give you in this podcast. But there is still, I think, especially amongst a lot of younger people, I think a lot of folks, not everybody, but there's a real sense of disenchantment, of disengagement. I think that a lot of young people and a lot of uh, Black people, young Black people, are at a moment where they're really questioning their connection to this country and whether or not this country wants to be connected to them. Um, what's your advice for that community of our young people?
Well, for the young people that I think have not engaged sufficiently in learning history, I always say to them, there's an awful lot of things that have happened long before you got here, and that you need to kind of figure out what went before you. Why are you here? An example would be there was a time, and I talked about swimming. There was a time in my hometown in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, there was two black pools. That large city, there was only two pools that black people could go to. Many young people never learned to swim, never learned to swim because not that they didn't want to, but they didn't have the opportunity. If they didn't live near one of those pools, they didn't ever get a chance. There was no programs basically out there to help those folks. Uh, and when you look at all the things that went on during the 60s with the rioting and the demonstrations, uh, those folks, most of them are dead now. They've moved on. You think about Martin Luther King and his group, there's just two or three, Andrew Young and
Mm.
maybe two or three others that are still alive. But they went through some things in order to get there. And so when that young person now is at a place in life thinking that maybe they have earned that and they should be there, that's not true. You got there on the backs of others. And so it may be that in the future, somebody's going to be on your back trying to move forward as well. So you got to learn a little bit more of your history there. Again, that's when it's good. I think when you listen to your elders or listen to people that have been there, learn from them, listen intently to what they're saying.
How would you tell folks, both younger people in our community, but really just people more broadly? Um, what's your best advice for how to approach conflict? I mean, I'll share something with you. Years and years ago, I was on a part of a panel discussion uh, with some folks of very different views than mine. And to your point about swimming, I kid you not, this man said with a very straight face that black people weren't as good at swimming because we just weren't as buoyant. And so when you talk about how people were excluded from pools and a lot of public spaces, so people didn't learn to swim, and then that really then gave rise to all of these stereotypes like, oh, black people can't swim because I guess for some reason we must have some, I don't know what the bigoted thinking was, that we were like born with like steel plates in our legs so we couldn't float. But you know when people say things and when people do things and things are being said and done that are hurtful, harmful, bigoted, racist, sometimes people are engaging with those things and those sentiments broadly, like maybe it's something a public figure says. But sometimes, there are a lot of folks, I think, particularly in the moment in which we're living now, where they think that like all bets are off. They can say, do, act however they like. And if you're on the receiving end of that, it can be really challenging uh, to figure out how to respond, right? You don't want to respond too much because then you become the story. And then whatever the offensive thing was, sort of is like nobody cares about that. They care about how mad you got when somebody did something. Or uh, one might be in a position where they feel like they just have to absorb it, like absorb the pain, absorb the insults, absorb the disrespect. You have navigated many, many of these situations, no doubt. So, as you talk to people who are living in what is really a very divisive moment right now, how do you suggest people better approach and deal with conflict like that?
Well, I think I've learned over the years when you hear something offensive, well, first of all, I always say listen well because sometimes what you hear is not what you really thought you heard. But listen well, and if you can, just kind of stop
Mm,
for a moment before you blurt something out because we have that automatic reaction. Someone says a word we don't like, and then we're going to retaliate. But listen well, take a moment if you can, and think about what your response is going to be. And if possible, try to make your response one that is positive, maybe one that's going to open up to a little bit more dialogue, as opposed to just really, coming right out and blasting someone. And then thirdly, wait and see what the responses come back to you. It may be one that you like. It may be one that you can find some common ground on. I can give you a very quick example. When I was working on my master's in education at Georgia State many, many years ago, I was doing a little project, I guess, on the integration in the black schools because it was very slow. And when they started this program where they would integrate a few black students into the predominantly white schools, one of my colleagues set up an interview with her principal. Uh, he agreed to it, sight unseen, but I
mm,
think he was taken a little bit back when he saw me in person. And when I was asking him about, how he was managing bringing in black students to his school, elementary school, and he was trying to be very careful with the pronunciation of a certain word. And at some point, he slipped in it. He was telling me, well, in this class, I put three
mm,
N's in it. And So when I heard that, I said, let's stop just for a moment. Can you say knee? Yes, knee. Can you say grow? Yes, knee, grow. Okay. That's the word you're trying to say, isn't it? And I think his face got a little bit red, but he made the attempt to say Negro after that. Uh, and so that was an example of how I diffuse conflict. Yeah. There have been other times when I wasn't so successful.
Was he getting confused? He was trying to slip into that other N word because
I
what
think
was
he
that? That was
forgot.
just
I,
his
I think
normal habit.
momentarily he forgot who he was talking to, and he was going over some figures, and he was going kind of fast. I think he just kind of forgot who he was talking to. So, as we were talking, we had to put people back on track.
Put people back on track. Sometimes folks need a little reminding of things. Well, Hurl Taylor, you are a reminder that we always have to keep reaching for new things. We always have to keep learning. And we should never take for granted that we can't continue to be better than we already are. You really are an inspiration, and your life, I mean, your story is an education to all of us. So I am so grateful for you being here and for you sharing it with
Thank you.
me.
It's been my
Thank
honor.
you.